don't think that there's anyone on the New York scene since him or after him that compares to him. There is no one like him as a person or as a craftsman.
Hi, I'm Jeff Greenfield, one-time colleague and longtime friend of David Garth, here on the lawn of Gracie Mansion, home to New York's mayors, many of whom Dave Garth helped put here. Dave got to start producing high school football on New York television, and while he loved producing, there was something he loved more: politics. And the man who brought him into the arena, however unwittingly, was Adlai Stevenson in 1960. Adlai Stevenson, of course, was not nominated in 1960, but that effort kindled in David Garth a passion to enter the political arena. What he needed was a campaign and a candidate. Fast forward to 1965 and Manhattan Congressman John V. Lindsay.
Television was really new in 1965, and the Lindsay campaigns were the first really telegenic campaigns in New York City, and that helped Mayor Lindsay break through, and David Garth played a key role in allowing Mayor Lindsay to project his best qualities to the people of New York.
I had never seen it before. People didn't think much of television advertising as a phenomenon, certainly not in New York, until David came along and ran the Lindsay campaign.
But it was the 1969 Lindsay re-election campaign where Dave Garth really began to develop what became a signature move, taking a politician's liability, meeting it head-on, and turning it into an asset. John Lindsay had made many mistakes in his first term and had become politically toxic, so much so that he lost the Republican race for renomination. He was forced to run on the Liberal Party line. Dave Garth was one of Lindsay's inner circle that developed the key strategic move of the '69 campaign, what we came to call in our more polite moments the Lindsay Eats Crow effort.
I guessed wrong on the weather before the city's biggest snowfall last winter, and that was a mistake. But I put 6,000 more cops on the streets, and that was no mistake. The school strike went on too long, and we all made some mistakes. But I brought 225,000 new jobs to this town, and that was no mistake.
The fact that John Lindsay sat before the camera on the back porch at Gracie Mansion and ate crow, that was the most important thing, and David realized that.
With Lindsay's re-election in 1969, Dave Garth's political consulting work really took off. He even was able to hire as a part-time assistant a young speechwriter who knew nothing about television production, me. Dave was involved in the campaigns of Richard Ottinger in New York, Adlai Stevenson III in Illinois, John Gilligan in Ohio, John Tunney out in California. In fact, David became so well known that Robert Redford offered him the chance to play himself in the movie The Candidate. Dave turned down that offer because he hated the script. There is no truth to the rumor that Dave insisted his part be played by Paul Newman.
Bottom line is this: I like what you stand for. You got balls, otherwise I wouldn't take you on. All right, so we take my crew, we get you doing your thing, and that's it. Thanks, honey. Huh?
You just get on with the people. Let me worry about the cameras. We'll see.
I'll tell you one thing.
Tell me one thing. You might just make it, my friend. People are going to take a look at our stuff and see a guy who's got guts. They're going to take a look at the crock and think maybe you can't get it up anymore. That's what it's all about, huh?
In 1973, Garth went to work in the Los Angeles mayoral campaign of Councilman Tom Bradley. Bradley had lost his first run for mayor in 1969 in large measure because his campaign tried to evade the race issue. Garth, he took it head on.
When I was running track here at UCLA, I couldn't have dreamed that someday I'd be running for mayor. But it was possible because of the kind of city that Los Angeles is. It's a city that respects a man who makes it on his own, who works hard, who doesn't ask for favors. After 21 years on the Los Angeles Police Force and 10 years on the City Council, I think the people of this city know where my heart is. I love this city. I want to keep fighting to make it better. That's why I'm running.
Bradley won, and David continued his remarkable winning streak. In 1974, supervising the upset victory of Hugh Carey as governor of New York, helping Ella Grasso become the first female governor of Connecticut, helping John Hines get elected to the United States Senate in 1976. But in 1977 in New York, the political story of the year was the campaign of a relatively unknown congressman from John Lindsay's old Silk Stocking district in Manhattan, Ed Koch.
I would not have become mayor of the city of New York if David Garth hadn't become my general manager, guru, however you want to refer to him, media consultant.
Koch was almost a nobody. He was a Manhattan congressman. The chances of his becoming mayor were pretty slim, but the fact that David Garth had decided to work for him was suddenly an imprimatur. It suddenly elevated him. If David Garth was working for Koch, there must be something there.
And he said to me, what he said to me, he says to every candidate, because I've talked to other candidates, you got to lose 10 pounds or 20 pounds. That's the first thing he says. So I said, I'll do it. And I did. He said, you have to stop wearing your three-button suits. I've worn a three-button suit ever since I came back from the Army. I said, if that's all it takes, I'll do that too. And he says, you have to stop being funny. Well, I said to him, David, I believe there has to be some humor, because that's me. And he said, all right, we'll make one commercial. And I think the commercial went something like this. A-Beam says he knows the buck.
And 2 years later, we didn't have any bucks. Then he told us he made the tough decisions. He must have forgotten Felix Rohatyn, Steve Berger, Governor Carey, and Big Mac. Now Mayor Beam is asking for 4 more years to finish the job. Finish the job? Hasn't he done enough?
They wanted someone who could run the city after 4 years of near bankruptcy under A-Beam. And Ed Koch was presented in that way, a guy who was not ideological particularly, but David managed to project him as a guy who could surround himself with competent people and actually manage the city, and that's what people wanted. This was a major political feat, and if anyone had any doubts about David Garth's ability, that sealed him as a real kingmaker in this city and around the country.
Dave Garth went international in 1978, working on the successful presidential campaign of Venezuela's Luis Herrera. And in 1981, he was there for the victory of Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin. Garth was hot. He was in great demand. But the reason why is critical to understanding this remarkable man.
There is no one who, in this metropolitan area, who has dominated politics like David. And it's no accident. It's because he knew how to shape a candidate, and he knew what to do.
I think David Garth's role as a kingmaker lay in his ability to elicit the key message that was really going to give people a leg up in the competitive process.
Pick what resonates with people, hammer at it, keep hammering at it, don't get diverted. This is the salient point. This is the marketable point that we are going to sell this candidate on.
In 1980, Dave ran the campaign of Pennsylvania Republican, well, then Republican, Arlen Specter, who was elected senator. He also took on the only presidential campaign in his political career, working on the independent effort of John Anderson. Dave often demanded and often got total control over the campaign message, and that included dealing with the press.
He was a master at manipulating the press. He was a quote machine.
Well, he'd be yelling and screaming and raving and ranting and cursing. He was a Hockmeister. He would invariably try to wear you down in any way possible.
He very much wanted to intimidate you, and he did. I don't know of a person who wanted to talk to David, including many reporters. Oh, no, I got to talk to David. You know, what am I going to do? And you would steel yourself up for that interview with David. David, can I talk to you? No. And, you know, and so what do you want? And, you know, it's, well, you know, the mayor said this, you know, what do you think of his strategy? He said, that's for you to find out. He really understood the craft and the manipulation of the press and how to shape stories way before anyone else did. He was a master at it.
To be sure, Dave had his share of losses. Particularly painful were the losses in 1982 of New York Mayor Ed Koch in the governor's fight in New York, and Los Angeles Mayor Tom Bradley in the governor's fight in California. In 1989, Koch lost the mayoralty in a bruising primary battle with David Dinkins. Up till then, Garth candidates had occupied City Hall for 16 of the previous 20 years. Garth made up for that loss 4 years later when he partnered with another shy retiring New Yorker, Rudy Giuliani.
I decided to hire David for a couple of reasons. Very tough, very outspoken, very demanding, very smart, and 100% engaged. He was everything that all the people who loved him said he was. He wasn't quite as bad as all the people who hate him said he was. Right? There are great media people who do great television. There are great political analysts who can really figure out how to organize a campaign. David combines both of those things. He's a great media person, understands it really well, but he's also a brilliant political strategist. He is 100% on your side, and he is a tremendous friend. We would have all of these sessions, prepare scripts, go over the scripts, edit the scripts, take out words, put in words, try this one, try that one. Some of them were good, some of them were bad, none of them were great. And then we were having this one session doing commercials, and after we finished shooting the commercials, I think David just asked me something like, how'd you become a Yankee fan in Brooklyn? When I was 2 years old, my father put a Yankee uniform on me and sent me downstairs to play with the kids. And the first thing they did was throw me in the mud. So here I was in the middle of Brooklyn. I was the only kid on my block that rooted for the Yankees. All my uncles were Dodger fans. All my friends were Dodger fans. And we would travel all the way to the Bronx to watch the Yankee games because my father made me into the only Yankee fan in Brooklyn. I was it. I mean, I couldn't find, for years, I couldn't find another kid from Brooklyn who was a Yankee fan.
It was a fabulous commercial. You know, that, yeah, this guy could really take it. He's a tough guy. And that's what he was trying to do, and he got all this. Brilliant craftsmanship. You can't say more about him. He really was a genius for his time.
In 2001, as the next New York mayoral campaign loomed, 3 different Democrats, Ferrer, Vallone, and Green, all came calling. And Dave said no. Then another aspirant for the mayoralty reached out, Mike Bloomberg.
He signed on to work for people that he had confidence in. You know, he's not just a hired gun that would work for anybody. If David Garth, and that was my job to hire him the first time, was to convince him. I knew we wanted him because Patty Harris told me we wanted him. I didn't know him before that. But my first job was to convince him that I could make this city better. We yelled at each other a lot. David and I yelled at each other, you know, and fought, and invariably won. Really annoying. And almost every time he was right in retrospect.
David was really critical in helping him kind of be able to project himself in a natural and honest way so that the public could really see who he was.
And when you talk to him about what do you say to the public, how do you get the public to have confidence in you and vote for you, I think the first piece of advice would be yourself and be realistic.
Dave Garth's career as a political media consultant has spanned almost 50 years, half a century, where he made a lasting impact in how political campaigns were conducted and who governed us.
David Garth was an original. He really was. In that world, when he started, he's still an original. I don't think anybody's gonna replicate either his style, his passion, or, you know, his sheer brilliance about politics.
He didn't go for some hack out of a clubhouse. He went for guys that made a difference. That will be his legacy in the history books, I believe.
I can't think of a better way both to honor David and to reflect his vision and his values than through a chair at the City University system.
Well, I think it's the greatest honor possible. I mean, CUNY represents the heart beat of the colleges of the city of New York. And that is David. He represents the common, ordinary guy.
I think it's wonderful to have a chair for David Garth at CUNY because David has done so much to develop the city.
I think David would be enormously proud of this honor. We'd be particularly proud that it's at City University, a university that will undoubtedly someday produce another David Garth.
To understand who David Garth is, which invariably will if somebody gets the Garth Professor or the Garth Scholarship or the Garth Book or the Garth Seat or whatever you name after David. Well, who was he?
Every time a student says, "Who was David Garth?" I think we're going to get a more responsible, more active citizen in New York City, and that's a gift.
David and I, we would have a dinner every 2-3 weeks. And, you know, you sit at the table and you talk about current events, but ultimately you drift back into the battles of the past and the war stories that each can tell, how we won this and how we won that and how we suffered here and suffered there. It's special. It's special. Anybody who has worked with David Garth has been a very lucky person. Has had, if they had a friendship, and I have had and still do such a friendship, they're very lucky people, because there aren't many David Garths in the world.